My code is secure. I filtered somebody else's for bad stuff. Therefore, the stuff exiting must be good. No. You can't ever trust that stuff. Assume all the input you get is malicious. If you start with that notion that every bit of input ever into your application is malicious, you have a much easier time grasping defense. Anybody, you guys use Firefox, right? Old, really funny trick. If you go to the about:config in Firefox, anybody put the tick or in your user agent before?
Actually, I would do the script XSS.
Oh, this XSS, yeah. So you go to a website, and because now there's either Java technology or Microsoft and then everybody else, right? So you have to determine whether it's an ActiveX control you want to push to them, or if you want to do it via JavaScript or Java. So the first thing most sites do is a browser check. And the old way to do it was to make a database call against a string do a string comparison against the database field. Right? Sounds innocuous enough. Look at the user agent that comes in on the header. Do a string compare. Then if one or two, right? You push ActiveX or you push Java. Well, funny. What if that was what if that string comparison was a SQL injection statement? And by comparing user agent strings, you just expose your entire company's customer database to the world. Would that not be the world's easiest? So you could actually, for a while, I mean, it works less and less every day, but you could actually change your user agent to like single tick or and just browse websites and watch them throw SQL errors at you. Those are the ones you just like, okay, avoid them, never go there, never bank here, right? Very quickly you realize what companies you don't ever want to do business with on the web. Like what he said is also, this actually works a lot. Put a cross-site scripting, script alert or document.cookie or alert something and like a little pop-up. Just be ready for the millions of pop-ups you're about to get every site you browse. I'd say somewhere in, if we look at 100 websites, I'd say between 1 and 2 of them will ever validate the data that comes in from the host center, from the host. They will validate the inputs, right? The input field, the first name, last name, password field. They'll validate that for malicious input. But why would anybody manipulate the host or the user agent field? You can't hack that, can you? Just like you couldn't do view source back in the day until you pulled back the curtain and oohs and ahs came. Building zero trust interfaces is actually a lot harder than you may think because we build these chain-linked applications that one relies on trust from another. So you authenticate here, and then as long as it has given you the credentials, you can then pass. You'd go to this site, and this site would ask the other one via a service whether you're authenticated enough, right? Sounds good? As soon as one of them in that chain is compromised, everything goes to hell. So now, if you've got 12 partners that you're passing data and authenticating via web services across, one of them has to have one error. What do you think the likelihood of that is? I'm going to go with really, really good. Authenticate. That's the auth part. Interfaces whenever possible. Try not to do it with username and password. Don't forget authorization. People do this, and people build these web services now that once you're authenticated, you can do everything, but they think that, okay, I've got 50 web calls possible. The first one, the least privileged one, submits a ticket. The highest privileged one deletes everything. But I'm only going to tell you about the one that you're allowed access to, but I'm going to authenticate you via authent to the web service. Any problems there? Potentially? For example, if I can figure out what the other ones are, I can do them. There's nothing holding me back from running those admin-related tasks. Please don't forget about this. Authorize and authenticate, right? Just because, oh, they're both gone, okay. of you guys actually works here, saw them. But when we walked in the building, they said, hey, you guys here for the meeting? We said, yeah, sure, whatever meeting we're here for, just point us to it. And they pointed us to some room down the hall. I mean, they authenticated us, but we certainly weren't authorized for the room we were in. Right? Just because we can get in the building doesn't mean we should be going to that room or that room, right? Make sense? And don't rely on others. It's a God-given fact that every piece of software has exploitable defects. Every single piece of software out there. If you think you've written something that is secure and unhackable, think again. Given enough time, somebody will find a hole. Don't assume other developers wrote secure code. This becomes a problem when you're writing an update to an app 17 people in a different country wrote last week, and somebody else in a different country wrote, in a different language wrote the week before that. This makes that very difficult, and all the more important for you to write your little bit as if it's being dropped into like this ugly, dirty, black cesspool called the internet, right? You think about it as this just ugly place, in this scary place. You kind of figure that, this is not intuitive in development, by the way. Get procurement, sourcing, legal, and risk involved. He's a popular guy. The reason you want to get your procurement groups involved is because the companies you do business with, there has to be some kind of logic that says you have to be responsible for the code you write. Now, you have to validate that they're doing something logical and actually they are doing it, not just telling you they are. So these guys work together. Legal, to hold them responsible, and risk, to know when you can accept the risk and when you can't. Not all web vulnerabilities are created equal. All right, that's all I have on the slides. Anybody have some time to...
What do you got to demo?
Huh?
You said you have some stuff to demo?
I do, but you have to turn that off.
Alright.
Well, okay, here's what